If you don't like romance animes, I have bad news for you. Because I watched not 1, not 2, not 3, not 10, but 6 romance shows. 7 if you count Jack Black's beautiful love story, which I touch on at the end. But yeah, I did kind of go crazy watching 9 shows, which I may come to regret or may not. Who knows? There's only one way to find out. I gotta be real, Horimiya had me tearing by the end. Horimiya follows the characters of Hori, a sociable and kind person, and Miyamura, who is the quiet and shy guy of the class, whilst also being a bit of a rebel by having piercings and tattoos. The both of them connect over Hori's little brother, with the connection growing across the 13 episodes. The sidecast is nothing to scoff at either, with many romance side plots of characters growing bonds. It's really sweet and doesn't need to fall into the romance cut short to an unfortunate accident or illness that many romances look to do to have their viewers shed a tear. I thought that the art style suited the show very well, each location and character suiting every given situation well. I think the show also pulls off its dialogue and character interactions perfectly, with every second of every episode feeling like it matters, which kept me engaged from beginning to end. And the iconic opening needs no explanation, with a great song and even better visuals. I think Horimiya is one of the rare cases where I don't have a single bad thing to say about it, where even with some of my favourite shows, I can find some issues, like how Kaguya-sama has lopsided pacing, or I Wanna Eat Your Pancreas falls into the trope mentioned earlier, but Horimiya just didn't have that. It also didn't have an overt amount of drama, with there being some, though when it's there, it never affected the A-plot of the show. Let's just say after watching this, I'm excited for the side series that's supposed to air in July. Everything is easier to tell in hindsight, so if I change my mind, you'll see, but as I see it now, Horimiya is a 10 out of 10 show. Higehiro, after being rejected, I shaved and took part in a High School Runaway. Well, considering the title, I thought it would be an Akiba Maid-War type of sorts, with our protagonists running away together and being chased by the government or something. But no, it's just Rent-A-Girlfriend with adults. The main cast has almost a like-for-like for every girl in Rent-A-Girlfriend, besides Mami, but I didn't like her anyway. I will say that the pacing lends itself to being a more serious story than the comedy of Rent-A-Girlfriend, but the comparison is still something I noticed on reflection. Anyway, Higehiro follows this old guy finding a high school runaway and housing her. The series likes to use Sayu, the runaway, as a means of exploring trauma, and by extension the ways that affects her world. I think the dynamic of an old dude and a high school girl works well, but beyond that the cast is a bit lackluster. As I said before, pretty much the entirety of the female cast partially takes from 1 or 2 Rent-A-Girlfriend characters, which I don't think was the greatest choice for a more serious show, with Goto and Mishima feeling a bit soulless because of that. I don't think that drags down the show completely though. I enjoyed the show whilst watching it, and there are definitely many enjoyable moments to be had. Not to mention, while it's definitely not as unique as other shows I've liked, the art style was nice enough. It's sad that I'll likely forget the show to time. I already don't remember the opening, and I'll feel it'd be because the show is average. Like with a lot of shows I enjoy, they're generally the so bad it's good types, but this is just above average or good. Because of that, I gave Higehiro, after being rejected, I shaved and took in a High School Runaway, an 8 out of 10. Despite this being third in terms of order, it was like my third last to watch, and at this point I may have watched too many good romance animes, with The Angel Next Door Spoils Me Rotten being one of those. It follows Amane Fujimiya, who's just your average high school dude, seen him 100 times, and the Angel of My Hero, which I don't say as a joke, as in the school she's actually nicknamed the Angel. The two of them grow a bond, which I was really fond of the pacing that the series had, getting to see how the two of them learn to live with each other, much like Horimiya. I think the main difference between the two is that this show fell into some tropes, unlike Horimiya. Like for example, this show had Chitose call the shot before the reveal, which to an extent does break the immersion a little, at least for me. I think the cast was great, though the eyes designs did take a little time to get used to, but I feel like the motivations and personalities blend well for what they were going for. Beyond that, the opening was pretty good, going for a different type of genre, but it was still a bop, and showing off the show's premise pretty well. If for some reason you hadn't noticed, I do mainly watch romance types, but I probably discovered how much I like both realistic and unrealistic romances this month, thanks in part to this show. I will probably turn back after 6 of them being romance, 1 being ecchi, and going 50-50 quality wise on the 2 that weren't either. Anyway, The Angel Next Door spoils me rotten. A good watch and one I enjoyed a lot. 9 out of 10.
このバカ
Nagatoro. Well, I watched this at the beginning of the month and waited until second last to review it. Don't Toy With Me Miss Nagatoro follows quiet nerd Naoto, who consistently gets toyed with by said Miss Nagatoro. It follows them learning to get along with each other, despite the wildly different personalities, where Nagatoro is overly defensive of Naoto. I'm not going to say it was necessarily better or worse than anything else here, though I thought it was more coherent than Oresuki, if that gives any insight. I definitely found Nagatoro a bit more of a filler show than anything, with it being watchable, but over anything else it feels like it was made for a background type of show. It didn't really have much that made me grip to it and want to continue like a lot of other shows here. I also felt that a lot of the jokes were a little overdone too, with nothing outrageously horrible, but nothing I found myself smirking at. The opening was alright, with a nice animation and song, though the song really wasn't my thing, so I skipped over it most of the time. Overall, Nagatoro was something to watch. I wouldn't say it was actively engaging, though it wasn't a slog to get through like other shows have been in the past. I feel like the phrase I heard calling this sort of thing junk food describes the show best, which leaves Don't Toy With Me Miss Nagatoro at a 6 out of 10.
見てましたね。エロいな。パパパタピタパパ。
I am completely and utterly divided. Oresuki has many fatal flaws, which made it hard to watch, say the horrible fourth wall breaking or setting up plot points that don't even get explored, but it also had some enjoyable elements, with a decent romance plot that had some enjoyable twists. The story sees the titular Kisaragi trying to help others get with his best friend, with the bench and the baseball game being staples of the story right from the get-go. With this, the only girl that Kisaragi doesn't want to confess to him does, and what makes it worse is Joro, his best friend, he wants the one girl that confesses to Kisaragi. Antics ensue, and 10 episodes later, we are no closer to the end of the story. I can most of the time give a show some slack if a satisfying conclusion isn't reached within the show, but even shows that are certain to get a second season end at a satisfying point. Think Rent-A-Girlfriend finishing with the Mummy and Chizuru fight, or Kaguya-sama which finished on the fireworks. It just leaves a satisfying conclusion to where you don't necessarily need to continue if you don't want. You found your own conclusion to the story. Not to mention the sequel is one OVA. Granted, I haven't watched it, but depending on the length, I don't think everything that was promised gets covered. I wish to talk about meta-humor for a second. Most of the time I just think it's a waste, where saying what episode you're on just reminds me how much more left I have to watch. Don't get me wrong, a new play on tropes can be done right, but I feel it has to be done in-universe where the characters aren't acknowledging the viewer, but more so the ridiculousness of a trope. And if pulled off well, it can be entertaining. Now, if you're in the comments saying that the Monogatari series has meta-humor and you like that, well yeah, it's not like meta-humor makes or breaks a show, and I dislike when they do use it, but I enjoyed other things about the Monogatari series, like the insane world building and story. But anyway, I nowadays normally like to split the pack in giving shows a score by going 8 or 6 out of 10, to show what I truly thought, with avoiding the psychology of picking a 7 every time. But Oresuki could go either way, so I gave it a 7 out of 10.
余計に計らえ
ああ、あれですね、コスモス会長。せっかくサンちゃんと友達になったからお昼ご飯でも一緒に食べようって誘いに来たんですか？さよう。
It was good. Enough said. Wait, hold on. I do actually have some words on the Monogatari season. I think it definitely started slow with Monogatari. Why? Because if you didn't know, second season is a combination of Monogatari stories from the second season. Which also means we got a bunch of recap episodes in between, which I wasn't a fan of coming off of watching the series that were recapped. Now, despite the slow start, I really do like the Sengoku and Kaiki plots, which do intertwine. Which, I'll try and explain the plot, but it's kinda hard for this kind of series. Basically, Araragi, our main protagonist for a majority of the series, comes across these monster-like things, which are called either oddities or apparitions, depending when it was translated. And basically, Araragi's job is going around and recovering his friends affected by these apparitions. There is more to it than that, but that's like a basic summary with no spoilers. Anyway, I think Hanekawa and Hachikuji's first plot were a bit lacking in terms of being great. I thought they were fine, they just lacked a lot of the excitement of the story that the rest of the season had. With Hanekawa's plot being basically the same as Monogatari Black with a different point of view, and Hachikuji's first plot being a what if type scenario, which had some confusing elements to it, making the segment a little hard to follow. However, after that, Sengoku's, Hachikuji's second plot, and Kaiki's plot are all amazing in their own rights, ending in something I expected, but still shocked me. I can't speak too in depth on the plot without spoiling something, so if any of what I said makes sense and sounds interesting, I would recommend starting the series. I really think it was great, even though it's a bit hard to express here. As for the animation and openings, it was still great this time around, with Moso Express being my favourite of the openings, with the last opening, Kogarashi Sentiment, placing a close second. The animation I think is still unique and charming, as how the characters express and move is very unique to the series. To finish, at its peak, it's the best Monogatari season yet, but with a slight inconsistency on the season, Monogatari series' second season gets an 8 out of 10. Lycoris Recoil. What can I say? It had a nice art style with a good cast, which of all things reminded me of the cyberpunk anime, but that was one of the things I liked about that show. It was a bit of a mix of Blend-S and Akiba Maid War in structure, bringing together the best of both series to create what I believe was a good show. Chisato, our protagonist, works in a cafe, which across the course of the show gains more members, but at the beginning it's just her and her teacher. She is in this cool agency thing where she has guns and takes things out. That's the plot. It felt like a weird mix of slice of life, but also trying to have a plot, which I just can't get my head around. Honestly, I couldn't grasp a lot of what the show was trying to tell with a lot of its cast, besides Takina, whose objectives are made extremely clear across the show, which whilst it didn't make the show hard to follow, it did convolute the plot a bit. The show had a standard Claris opening, which was alright, and I don't think the series did anything extremely wrong, though I feel the ending was a massive cop-out, which if they had pulled it off differently, would have tied the show together way better than it was. I'm doubtful on a season 2, considering they wrapped up nicely, though there's always chance for a bigger evil to be looming. Much like Oresuki, Lycoris Recoil's score could go either way depending on the day, so I scored it a 7 out of 10. Have you ever watched Sword Art Online? You have? Cool, because I haven't. But this is what I imagine it to be like. Though minus the whole game thing, it's just a fantasy in their real life. And minus the exploration, and definitely minus the clothes. So, Blade Dance of the Elementals follows Amnesia, where the guy gains some powers, and because he is a guy, he is special, and ends up in an all-girls school where it's revealed in his pre-amnesia phase, he was dressed up as a girl and the strongest thing known to mankind, or whatever. Look, if you end up watching this, it better not be for the story, as the season ends on a cliffhanger, which I don't think would be finished in the specials, but I don't know. Like, outwardly, it appears like an actual adventure show, but it's a mix of that and Rent-A-Girlfriend, but even Rent-A-Girlfriend keeps the minimum amount of clothing to the bikinis. In this, do you want to guess what the minimum clothing of choice is? Thigh-high socks. That's it. Now, I still want to be eligible for monetization if I can ever apply, so I'll refrain from showing it, but I'll give the timestamp on screen. I mean, it's literally the ending theme, which is banging, but still, why? I will say, whilst I think the newer looking anime shows are more stylistic, I can't help but also adore the older style too. I should also mention that the opening does its job and shows that it isn't your normal adventure, though it isn't anything special. I guess that's all I really have to say on the show, so I gave Blade Dancer the Elementalers a 6 out of 10. Now, with a show title like Pretty Boy Detective Club and this opening, what genre would you expect this show to be? Well, if you guessed cross-dressing and visual arts, you would be correct. The show, and the club for that matter, follow one Dojima Mayumi, who is a girl seeking the club's help about an event that happened in the past, with said club looking into it and other issues with Mayumi's special eyes. I felt the plot was pretty difficult to follow, with an extra 2 layers added for every issue solved. I liked the character designs, but the personalities weren't great, with I think just a little bit too much character development for a 12 episode show. I may have been a bit misled by the opening, which paints the show as more of a comedy than the mystery drama that the show is, and with no recognized villain, it makes the show even harder to follow. I don't really have much more to say on the series other than saying my score, which for Pretty Boy Detective Club is a 4 out of 10.
ほほう、そうかね。あいにく僕には学がなくてね。僕にあるのは美学だけだ。美学。そう、美学の学ぶとはこの僕のことなのさ。
This one is from my one and only true love, Princess Peach.
I debated whether I should put this in the video, considering it was done by Illumination, but 2 things made me think, why not? The first was that Universal has made a few anime series, and the second was that Pac-Man The Ghostly Adventures has a My Anime List page. I'll keep it short as I know this video will be long, but Mario's a failed plumber in Brooklyn with many thinking he's holding his brother Luigi back. They find a pipe with Mario sent to the Mushroom Kingdom and Luigi sent to Bowser. Cue epic adventure. It was definitely made for a younger audience, especially when compared to the Sonic movies, and the pacing was off, jumping from plot point to plot point without much development. Voice acting wise, you could tell that Chris Pratt and Seth Rogen especially weren't giving it their all. But hey, the movie looked nice. And you know, Jack Black was kinda carrying. Anyways, I enjoyed it as a Mario fan, but it's an average movie if you take away the branding. Regret is how I would probably describe this month. Not for the shows I watched, they're all fine enough and I'd watch them all again, besides probably Pretty Boy Detective Club, but I should probably turn it down a notch and watch some more longer shows, as well as these shorter ones. Just quickly, I want to go over how I see my ratings in terms of strengths. 10s are must watch for their genre. 9s and 8s are strong recommendations, again for the respective genre. 7s are average, 6s are okay, and 5 and below I would avoid. Anyways, if you made it this far, I would appreciate a like, comment, or subscription. All of it helps and tells me I am making stuff worth watching. If you would like more of me, my socials are linked down below, including a Discord which has notifications for when I go live. And other than that, thank you all for watching and I'll see you all next time. Bye!